Hey, let's do some more questions for atheists. Won't that be fun? Honestly, I enjoy these things because it's fun to see where the misconceptions of the religious lie. Where do they go ridiculously wrong? Because they tend to go ridiculously wrong a lot. So let's take a look at some more of that coming up next. Here comes Braxton Hunter again. He's put out a number of questions for atheist videos, and I've answered all of them, so I'm going to do it again. I don't see any reason why we should stop now, so here we go. Now, I don't remember, and honestly, I don't feel like looking it up, but it seems that previous videos have had 10 questions, and this one only has 5. If anybody wants to correct me in the comments, please feel free, because I'm not going to go look. Maybe that means that these are better questions. One can only hope so. So, without further ado, let's get to it.
In 2020, I had 10 questions for atheists.
I guess I was right. After doing as much as I've done, it's hard to remember them all, but hey, good for me, right? So yes, in 2020, you had 10 questions for atheists, and I answered them all, and at least in my opinion, those questions were terrible. But then again, so are all questions for atheists, especially since most of them are just repeats of things that other theists have already asked in the past. I know I've pointed this out, that it's like there's a list on a website someplace that they're all drawing from, and they're all just picking their favorites. Hopefully this time will be better. We can only wait and see.
And the response was pretty big. I put my reaction to the videos that atheists made in response to it into a playlist on this channel that you can check out. And I still get answers to those questions to this day. But now, as 2025 is upon us, I've got 5 questions for atheists in 2025.
Cool, let's get to them. Now, I think there was another questions for atheists video in there somewhere, because I'm pretty sure I've done more than one of these since the initial 10, but again, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, because this all starts to run together. I have yet to see a single theist who has asked any really good questions, things that couldn't be easily answered with a simple Google search. And that's kind of a problem, don't you think? At least I think it is. You can let me know in the comments if you think so too. So enough with the lead up already. Let's get to the questions.
Given certain events and current debates in the worldview discussion arena, if you're an atheist, I want to know what your answer is to these questions. So let's just jump right in.
Before that, and yes, I am delaying it a little bit, but honestly, I'm not sure why there are so many questions when the answers always seem so painfully obvious to me. Now, granted, that could be because I'm on this side of the theological divide and they're on the other, but I don't honestly have a lot of questions for the religious. I get where they're coming from, and I can read them generally like a book, so I don't have to keep coming up with questions for them because I know pretty much what they're going to say. It's very rare when I get thrown for a loop, and you'd think that somebody who spends their time online talking to atheists, you'd think they would understand this stuff, right? Of course, he's just looking for content for the mill, so I guess I'm game. So please, let's get to it.
Question 1. Cameron Bertuzzi over at Capturing Christianity recently caused a lot of controversy by saying he no longer takes atheism seriously.
Cameron Bertuzzi is an idiot. Now, I purposely didn't respond to that video. I saw it go by and I ignored it because Cameron Bertuzzi has gone completely off the reservation. I no longer care about anything that Cameron has to say because I can't even take him seriously anymore. He doesn't know what atheism is, and he doesn't care. He's had it explained to him on numerous occasions, and he's just ignored it and gone right back to his own lunatic bullshit. He is not remotely an honest interlocutor. Therefore, Cameron Bertuzzi can go and fuck himself. I doubt I'll ever do another one of his videos because he is not going to pay attention. He's only after money and influence, and fuck anybody who's doing that. But I guess we have to see what point he's going to make, since this is a springboard. not a direct Cameron load of horseshit. So go right ahead, Braxton. Ask something worthwhile.
The reason why I don't take atheism seriously any longer is because even if we accept the atheist's strongest argument, it still wouldn't prove atheism.
But atheism isn't making any claims. This is why Cameron is such a complete douche nozzle. He knows this, but he's just pandering to his ignorant religious audience. We don't have to have arguments because we're not making claims. We're not saying there are no gods. We're saying that you have not proven your case. Because you haven't. But he has to have some kind of response to the rise of atheism, and this is what he's chosen to do. Lie. I'm not going to deal with bald-faced liars because I have no respect for them. Atheism isn't a worldview. Atheism isn't a belief system. Atheism isn't a religion. Anyone who pretends that any of that is true is full of shit. And Cameron has got shit coming out of his ears. So fuck you, Cameron. Now, with that being said, let's see what Braxton wants to know.
We have these really powerful arguments, at least from our perspective.
And your perspective sucks. Because you'll make the arguments, we will rip them to shreds, and you will just repeat them over and over again verbatim. It's like you're not even listening. Because you're not. The simple fact is that they don't care because they're not after the truth. They just really want it to be true, and the second that a theist pulls that one, they go straight into the dishonest interlocutor box with people like Cameron. You don't have good arguments at all. You've got shit arguments that you accept based on blind faith and fifis only because they stroke your ego. If there was an honest, intelligent theist out there somewhere, one that presented their arguments, and the second that those arguments got shot down, they stopped using that argument ever again, I'd be shocked. Then again, I don't think they'd be a theist for long, would they? Your arguments are all trash. They have all been soundly debunked. The only reason that you cling to them is because they get you where you want to go. And that is not a sign of intellectual integrity. It makes you look like an idiot.
On the theist side, like arguments from fine-tuning,
which isn't an argument, it's a claim. And it's a laughable claim at best. They are looking at things from a ludicrous, completely unrealistic perspective. Now, yes, I know that I'm jumping in here a lot because I think Braxton deserves to be shown where every single one of his assertions are wrong. Not that I think he cares, but he deserves to be shown. Here's the reality. The universe is how it is. We arose out of the way the universe was. We were not the intentional goal of it. We are the product of the universe, not something that was planned the whole time. That's where they are going wrong. They are making assumptions that are simply not defensible or demonstrable. I want you to show me how you got there, and you simply can't. That's because they are starting with a conclusion that they came to for entirely emotional reasons, and that betrays their irrationality. Whereas we are starting with evidence, and that doesn't coddle their fifis, and that's the childish part of the whole thing. I want to see how you got there, not what you believe, not what you wish was true. I want to see your chain of evidence, and they don't have one. Just looking at the real world proves the whole thing is just bullshit. Life cannot demonstrably exist anywhere else in the universe, at least not that we've seen yet. This little ball of dirt is it, based on the evidence that we currently have. How does that make anything fine-tuned for life? Braxton, please explain. Because these claims just fall apart the instant you actually take a look at them. Not that the religious give a damn, because they just really want to believe. But wanting to believe doesn't make it true. That's the problem.
But yes, there are arguments on the other side that are meant to show that it's unlikely God exists.
But that's not how this works. You have the burden of proof since you are making all the claims. Remember, we're not, and we don't have to. All we're doing is proving that your claims are wrong and completely indefensible. claim falsified, move on to something else. But they can't do that, can they? Because, like I said before, an honest theist, they would get their claim refuted and then they'd stop making that claim. But that doesn't happen with most theists, does it? It's the same old tired bullshit that gets trotted out again and again and again because they've got nothing else. They know they've got nothing else, but they can't change their minds because they weren't using their minds in any way to begin with. They just really want it to be true, and we all know how pointless that is. So we really need to stop them and say, dude, you're full of shit. If they're worthwhile, they'll stop believing this crap. If they don't, then they're not worthwhile. I don't know a lot of theists that I've ever run into that have actually done that. These people are not intellectually honest. Not at all.
Or that God does not exist, like arguments from evil or divine hiddenness arguments.
Those are not arguments that God doesn't exist. Those are arguments showing just how irrational your conception is of your God. They're not arguments against God. They're arguments against your unsupported claims about your God. Your claims are not justifiable in reality. You don't just get to make up some shit in your head that you like, because that's not how intelligence works. How did you come to that conclusion that your God had any of these omni-properties? Because when evaluated rationally, those claims don't make any sense. We can evaluate your claims and compare them to reality, and they all fall apart completely. That's a problem for your side. Not that you seem to care, because you just keep doing the same thing.
They just keep saying the same thing. They just keep saying the same thing.
Yes, sir.
They just keep saying the same thing.
We are asking for your proof, and you don't have any. We are asking you to justify your assertions, and you can't do it. And that's kind of a problem, don't you think?
And so this puts us in an interesting spot. We've got arguments for and against.
No, you don't. You have claims for, and people ripping your unsupported claims to shreds, and you refusing to give it up because you really wish it was true. This is where you are going wrong. It's not us, it's you. You don't even understand what's going on. But it sounds good to me is irrelevant. We are all in this world together. How do you show me that the claims that you are making are factually correct using something that I can objectively examine on my own? Because I don't trust you. You've proven yourselves to be completely uncritical and irrational. This is just you spouting shit out of your asshole, and we're asking, how in the hell do you know that? Present your evidence in such a way that we can verify what you're saying without having to believe what you believe first. And they can't do it no matter how many times we ask. This shouldn't be as hard to understand as apparently it is.
But as Philip Goff suggested recently, perhaps you have a God of limited power. This would mean you have really powerful arguments from God on the theist side, like the fine-tuning arguments, but then the arguments from evil and divine hiddenness no longer become powerful arguments for atheism.
But they're still not arguments for atheism because atheism is making no claims. These people are so ludicrously clueless that I don't even know what to say to them anymore. I guess we have to let the whole powerful arguments for theism thing go, since we've already dismantled that one. But the problem here, as I've said before, the two sides aren't even after the same thing. They want comfort, we want truth. They have no truth, at least not that they can demonstrate, and we don't give a damn about their comfort. Never the two sides are going to meet because we're not even speaking the same language. We do not have the same goals. What they're spouting is not going to change our minds, and us pointing out how irrational their beliefs are, that's not going to make them any smarter. So we're kind of at an impasse here, but it's not our fault. It's theirs. We expect them to come up to our level where evidence and rationality matter, and we're sure the hell not going to go down to theirs. I don't really know what to do with this, do you?
Instead, what they are arguments for a limited God, but not arguments for no God.
No, they're not arguments about any gods at all. All you're doing is saying, we believe in X, and we're asking you to show us why. Instead, all they can do is just repeat the claim over and over and over again verbatim. We believe in X doesn't prove anything. It just proves you're an idiot. This is not evidence. It's like them saying, I have a fire-breathing dragon in my garage. Prove it. But I have a fire-breathing dragon in my garage. Sorry, that's not evidence. That's a claim. You've got to back that claim up if you want us to take you seriously. All we can do is show where your claims are completely unsupported, but you don't seem to care about that, and that's your problem, not ours. You are the ones with the piss-poor epistemology. We can only show where you fail. We can't make you care about your own stupidity. That's kind of the problem. That's why you get laughed at, because you can't figure out where you're going wrong. And we're telling you exactly where you're going wrong. But you don't care, do ya?
And so there's no reason to take atheism seriously, someone might decide. So the question is Cameron wrong? And if so, why is he wrong?
I've already given it to you. He's wrong, you're wrong, Frank Turek is wrong, William Lane Craig is wrong. You're all wrong because you have a shit epistemological standard. That's the problem. But I like it. So what? Nobody cares what you like. We care what you can demonstrate is actually the case in objective reality. That's why we keep asking for evidence, not arguments, not claims, and you don't have anything. Or your arguments are shit because they don't demonstrate the things that you purport them to demonstrate. And that's also kind of a problem, right? You need to show us your fire-breathing dragon, and you can't do it. You just claim to know it's real. Okay, how do you know? We just do. Can you see why this is not impressive? Obviously not, because we've explained this time and time again, and you people can't get it through your heads. I wouldn't say if you could figure it out, but you can't, because you don't care. This is all fifis and faith, and that's irrelevant to anything that exists in the real world. It doesn't matter what you believe, it matters what you can prove. And you people can't prove anything except that you're all a bunch of dipshits. This is why you have problems. This is why you don't get anywhere. You fundamentally misunderstand the discussion going on. This is why we need to stop playing these stupid games with these people, because it's just not productive. Call them out. But they won't respond because they don't care. They're too busy living in these ridiculous fantasy worlds in their heads that they really, really like. And none of that is a good thing. It is not now, and it never will be. Knock it off! Honestly, we're going to call it a day after that one, because that was one of the most absurd questions around. These people fundamentally misunderstand the problem because they are the problem. Their lack of rationality and critical thinking is the problem, and they couldn't care less. There is a fundamental disconnect going on between the ears of pretty much every theist out there. We don't care if you really want to believe it. We care if the things that you're spouting are demonstrably true. You say it is, but how do you know that? And better yet, how do you prove that to anyone else? That's why this whole thing looks and smells like a scam, because that's exactly what it is. Now, granted, you might be duped, but that again is your problem, and if you refuse to accept your own failure to ask rational questions and follow the evidence where it leads, that's your problem too, isn't it? I'm still waiting to get to anything that isn't your fault. Seriously, this isn't how I wanted this video to turn out. I was hoping to do probably 2, but now if this is any indication of how things are going to go, this might be one video ripping apart his questions and his preconceptions for every single question that he has. And now I'm kind of committed to doing the whole thing because I've made one, I kind of have to make the rest. Joy. So what do you think of his first question? Go ahead and rant in the comments. I'd love to have an intelligent conversation with the religious, but they are so unbelievably stupid and ignorant that I honestly don't know what to say. It would be one thing if they could look objectively at their own beliefs, but they can't. It's like a child that's desperate to believe that Santa Claus is real because they want presents. What are you going to say to that? I honestly don't know anymore. Someone, please give me a solution down in the comments because I am completely at a loss. The religious generally don't have good questions for atheists, but at least most of the time, those questions actually address atheism. This time it doesn't, and our video maker ought to know that. Sadly, he doesn't, so we're going to get into some very unchannel-like topics. I apologize for that up front, but I guess we have no choice but to move ahead, so stay tuned. Here we go again with Braxton Hunter's 5 new questions for atheists in 2025. The first question wasn't at all impressive. This one is utterly pointless, and I'm going to warn people in advance that this gets political. That's not my choice, it's Braxton's, but I don't pull any punches. I know I don't usually do politics on the channel, so if that kind of thing bothers you, just switch it off now. You're not really missing a whole lot. I have no control if you get upset over anything that anyone says. So without further ado, here goes nothing.
Question 2. Some atheist creators seem to think that the recent presidential election was so important that it changes the way they should do things on their channels.
Not me. It's business as usual here, and it always will be. I don't let the external world influence what I choose to address, and frankly, I really don't respect people who do. Now, for people like Prophet of Azad, who I know just changed his entire video format, I get the impression that he's been considering a change for a very long time because he was getting tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again to the religious. And that, of course, is entirely his prerogative. It's also mine when I unsubscribed from his channel because the only reason that I was watching was those responses to the religious. Now, I'm not mad at him. It's his channel. He can do whatever he wishes to do, just as I can do with mine. It's also my choice what content I wish to consume, and what he's going to do now is not something that I choose to watch. I wish him the best of luck in the future, but I'm not going to be going along for the ride. That's why I'm very clear that if you don't like what I say, the door's over there. Make use of it. No harm, no foul. I don't get upset if people unsubscribe. It's a reciprocal relationship and always has been. I choose to talk about what I want to talk about. You choose to stick around if you want to. Or not. It's completely up to you. I don't get people who hate watch anything. I find that horribly childish.
Watch.
I am going to be changing things up on YouTube quite a bit, to the extent that I'm not going to be doing this channel anymore.
And truth be told, that was the last video of his I ever watched. Cool, you do you, and I'll do me. I don't know how anyone can expect anything else. Why is this even a question? Honestly, I don't get it. Now, there may be other channels that have changed their content. I don't know because I don't watch them. I can only speak for what I have experienced, and with Zod as the only one that I used to subscribe to out of this list, that's all I can respond to. In fact, I've unsubscribed from a ton of channels in the last couple of months because they have started to talk about things that I've got absolutely no interest in watching. If you want to do the occasional political video, fine, go ahead. I don't care. I'll just skip over it. I don't want to watch. If you're going to talk about it regularly, then I am going to take my eyes elsewhere because there's tons of content out there that I'm actually interested in watching on YouTube. If you're not it, have fun. I'm just going elsewhere. And I said this to somebody a while back, someone who wasn't even a content creator, and they got mad. Like it's my responsibility to follow these people around, whether I want to hear what they're saying or not. And I'm sorry, but that's just not how this works. Not one bit.
So I don't think the timing is lost on anybody here, that this is happening, shortly after the last political election. I'm not going to lie, very, very distraught and a little freaked out by the results. Not just who won, but the extent by which they won.
And I don't comment on politics generally if I can help it, at least not here. But in general, nobody should be surprised, and clearly nobody should be screaming at the sky like an immature child, like we've seen so many people do of a particular political persuasion lately. Seriously, grow the hell up. It's fine to be disappointed, but adults don't do what you're doing. Adults grow a pair and deal with it. This shows once again where the adults are and where they're not, and sad to say, there aren't a lot of adults out there when it comes to politics these days, especially on the extreme fringes. We can do without all of you. Just go fuck off. But again, I'm not watching his channel anymore, not because of that part of it, but because I want nothing at all to do with political discussions, and if that's what he wants to talk about now, more power to him, but I'm going to be somewhere else. That's pretty much all I have to say on that.
And that does get us all thinking about our future and our safety and what things are going to look like going forward. Basically, what that did is that just jolted me. For a while, I just kind of been on the treadmill doing what I was doing. I wanted to get off at some point and doing something different. And so this election and the little jolt that it gave me just kind of pushed me off the algorithm treadmill and gave me the prompt to just do something a little different.
Seriously, grow the hell up. I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize now, but I have to. If Trump was as terrible as you idiots all pretend he was, and keep in mind, I didn't vote for him in 2024, I didn't vote for anybody for president in 2024, but then you wouldn't be out there in public saying all the stupid crap that you're saying. He would be rounding you up and putting you in containment camps. But he's not doing that, is he? He never did. He never even played make-believe that he was going to. He respects your right to free speech, no matter how stupid your speech actually is. Whereas you idiots, or maybe not these people specifically, but the political ideology that they tend to espouse, they're the ones out there trying to cancel people and shut them the hell up. We kind of went through a decade on social media with left-leaning platforms shutting up the right and throwing them out into the cold just because they didn't like what they had to say. Hell, even when Musk took over Twitter, and I've always thought that it was a reprehensible platform, and I haven't been on it for many, 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 many years, but even then, he didn't go on a purge to get rid of the left-leaning voices. That was their choice. They no longer could shut up the people they didn't like, so they all ran for Blue Sky or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know because I don't use that either. You don't see people on the right saying, well, if my candidate doesn't win, I'm leaving the country. And then, of course, not doing it. The right has plenty of problems of their own, but at least they're not hypocritical assholes by and large. So, fuck you. You are not thinking rationally about any of this, and you're just making a fool of yourself. Knock it off.
I am shifting gears a little bit here and widening the lens, so to speak. And I want to talk about it.
I honestly don't care. This is probably a place where I ought to be fast forwarding, but since I want to contain this kind of political rhetoric, I'm going to just let it go. I warned you at the beginning, and I wrote the intro after I had seen the question for good reason. So go ahead, not like I care. I've never watched your channel anyhow, so go ahead and get to it.
Because I've changed my mind since my last video. I posted a kind of off-the-cuff video of my thoughts and feelings post-election.
And I still don't care. I mean, honestly, can we just get to the question already? If he just asked questions and not included all this irrelevant bullshit, I could have done this whole thing in a single video. It's making me regret my insistence on including the entire video in my response, so nobody accuses me of taking things out of context. I might have to reconsider that in some future videos, maybe. Let me know down in the comments if you think I should, because honestly, I want to head off all the potential irrational criticisms that I can until something like this comes along, and I have to wonder if it's all worthwhile. So let me know down below what you think. I might have a change of mind on this, at least in limited circumstances.
And I said that the political conversation, I didn't want it to set the tone for future videos. And I didn't want to get into politics. And I wanted to stay focused on what I was doing. But I changed my mind.
So now you're going to double down on your own political stupidity. Okay, that's probably not fair, and I'm not going to watch regardless. I have no problem with people saying whatever crazy stuff they want to say because I value free speech almost to the exclusion of all else. I would never try to cancel anyone. I just choose to watch other things, and that goes for everything in the political spectrum, left and right. If these two were going to start pushing a hardcore right-wing political screed, I'd be saying the exact same thing. I don't want to watch it. I'm going elsewhere. By all means, do it if that's what you want to do, but I'm not playing along. I'm an equal opportunity critic on both sides, but I really don't much care to see either one of them because I think both sides have some major problems. So can we please get to the question? Pretty please? Come on.
Why do you think that this election was so impactful to atheists in this way? What did it reveal about the culture?
I don't think it had anything at all to do with atheism. Correlation is not causation. That's irrational. You have people of a particular political persuasion, and you have atheists. Atheism is the lack of belief in gods, full stop. What they're doing has nothing at all to do with atheism. In fact, I think it has a whole lot more to do with religious style thinking than anything else. But no, I'm not going to go into that either. How many atheist channels are doing this? Seriously. Because the overwhelming majority of channels that I follow, they're not. And the ones that are, I'm not following them anymore. If you can't stick to one subject, then go away. Or rather, I'll go away. You do you, and I'm going to do me. I will find the content that I want to watch. That was easy. But he's just making assumptions about atheism that prove once again that he has no idea what the hell he's talking about. This isn't a question for atheists. It's a question for political pundits of a particular stripe. Those two are not the same thing. Now, like I said, you can go out there and talk about whatever the hell you want. This isn't limited to politics. If some atheist YouTuber that I'd been watching suddenly decided to inject a huge amount of, I don't know, cross-stitch talk, I'd unsubscribe there too. I've got nothing against cross-stitch. My wife does cross-stitch, and she even watches some cross-stitching content on YouTube. I'm fine with that, but that's not what I want to consume. So you do you, I'll do me, and that's the end of that. So it looks like this is going to be a really short video. I'd jump into the next question, but it looks long, and I don't want this to go on for 45 minutes, so we're just going to cut it here. That's two of his questions that have been positively terrible. The first was just ignorant, and that's not really a surprise. And this one was only tangentially a question for atheists. Sort of atheists. Not really atheists. I guess it was kind of atheist adjacent. It was addressing people who just so happen to also be atheists. People who have had atheist channels who decided to pivot to something else, and so what? Who cares? That's my question. Who the hell cares? I'd ask if anyone thought I should continue, but I'm already committed, and besides, by the time that anyone actually saw this video, I'll already be done with all the rest, so it really doesn't matter. It's one of those things that I might consider throwing up as a poll in Patreon, but since nobody ever answers there, what's the point in that? So I guess I'm going to just have to suffer through and see if this improves. I certainly hope it doesn't get worse, although I can't really imagine how. But, you know, who the hell really knows, right? Anyway, the comments are open. go ahead and let your feelings be known, and I'll be back next week with another question. And hopefully it'll have something to do with atheism. I guess we can only wait and see. After a while, this kind of stuff really starts to frustrate me, but we'll get there soon enough. It never really feels like an honest interaction because nothing changes after the fact. It's like talking to a brick wall, and that pretty much describes the religious. They just really want to believe, but they've never put any intelligent thought into it, and that becomes obvious the second you talk to them. So let's look at another clear example coming up next. We're back with Braxton Hunter and his 5 questions for atheists in 2025. At least we can be reasonably sure that he's not asking the exact same questions over and over and over again like a lot of theists do. He's kind of already done that, hasn't he? Question for you all, though. Do you think it's really worth answering these questions? I honestly do enjoy it most of the time, but more often than not, they're just a complete misunderstanding of reality forced through a Christian lens that just leaves me shaking my head. No matter what I say, it's not going to matter because people like Braxton are incapable of changing their minds. They're not here to find out what atheists really think. They're here to twist it so that they can use it in their videos. Still, we're already here, and now we're going to be over halfway through, so I guess we kind of have to continue, don't we? So, off to question 3, I guess. See you there.
Question 3. Many atheists are determinists, meaning that they don't believe in free will, at least not of the sort that many people think of when they hear the term free will.
I've already addressed that, but sure, we can do it again. I don't mind. Now, I don't know where he's going with this. This question is called Free Will and Determinism, so we'll do what we have to do and see where this goes. I guess that most of these free will discussions are essentially people talking past each other. They're talking around each other. They're not actually speaking the same language or after the same goals. If you take the time to clearly define your terms, this doesn't happen. So when I'm talking about free will, I mean the ability to make choices from among a range of available options without being unduly controlled from the outside. Influence? Sure, you can't really avoid that. I just don't have my choices predetermined by anything that can be demonstrated. If I can make a choice, then I have free will as far as I'm concerned. But you can't choose not to breathe. Yeah, just stop. You're being stupid. And yes, I have had people say that to me, and I'm sorry, but you're just making a fool of yourself. Breathing is a biological imperative that your life support apparatus, i.e. your body, needs to do for you to continue surviving. If you don't breathe, you die, and there goes all your choices, doesn't it? So that's just stupid. Let's try to keep this realistic.
They believe that the past history of the universe is like to a billion trains of dominoes or trillions of chains of dominoes that result in the past history of the cosmos, the formation of your physical body, your past life experiences, your neural structure, and the firings of neurons in your brain that are your choices but could not have been otherwise.
And my question for all of that, for the hardcore determinist, no free will advocates is, how the hell do you know that? Because there's a whole lot of assertions going on without any evidence being presented, right? That's why I've used the examples that I have, because I have seen these claims made so often without any kind of evidentiary support that it just makes no sense when you get down to brass tacks. If you honestly believe that at the beginning of the universe, in the initial instance of the Big Bang, absolutely everything in the universe was set in motion such that it cannot be changed because the specific position of atoms and quarks determines absolutely everything, that just tells me that you haven't thought about it enough. Because you have a universe that is not intelligent, that is not designed, that is just physics doing what physics does. That they honestly think that the random interaction of matter makes it possible for me to make this video in a way that anybody who watches can comprehend what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you're nuts. A conversation could never occur under those conditions because the atoms that make up my brain couldn't make a coherent sentence that could be understood by the atoms that make up your brain. I can kind of understand people who say, well, that must mean that there's a God, because shit makes sense. So either there's something going on that we don't understand, or hard determinism, the idea that everything was eternally determined by the state of everything at the moment of the Big Bang, that is just nonsense. If that's your position on free will, we are not speaking the same language. We're just not.
On the other hand, maybe some atheists think that we have what's called libertarian freedom, the notion that whatever you ended up choosing, you really could have done otherwise.
Which is demonstrably true. As I've said many times, if I walked into an ice cream shop, I could choose any flavor that I wanted, even flavors that I knew would kill me. If I had a severe nut allergy, I could still order almond pistachio or hazelnut toffee crunch or peanut butter, whatever. I could do that. I could order an elephant if I wanted to, although that would get me some pretty funny looks. Then you will get some people saying, well, yeah, but you're just being influenced by list of stuff. Yeah, for some things, sure. But influence is not a decision, is it? Because if I did walk in and order an elephant, what is it that actually demonstrably influenced me to order an elephant? What is it that you can prove actually did? Because a lot of this is just a bunch of empty claims. I'm looking for evidence, and you are just making assertions. That doesn't work for the religious. It's not going to work for you. There are some things that do influence me, certainly. The need for my body to continue operating influences me to want to eat. It doesn't necessarily control what I want to eat, but it does make me want to go and get some food. But the things that you like to eat influence what you choose to eat. Well, they can, sure, but I can also choose to eat things that I know I can't stand. Right now, I could walk over to the coffee maker and pour myself a cup of coffee and drink it. I don't like coffee, not anymore anyhow. I used to drink it by the gallon, but in the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years, I can't stand it. I hate hot drinks, period. So no, I would not enjoy that. I could go and buy a big bag of ghost peppers and just slurp them down. But I wouldn't want to do that. But I could, couldn't I? So influence is not control. There are people out there who eat things that I wouldn't eat or that they shouldn't eat. Pica is an eating disorder that has people putting non-food items in their mouths. That's biology for you. It influences what you do in bizarre ways, but you can also get treatment and stop doing that. So it's not like you're being forced to do it against your will. You can actually take steps to stop. So this whole thing is really absurd. People, just stop saying this stuff. It's really dumb.
So here's my question. If you're a determinist, how do we hold people morally culpable for things they do that could not have been otherwise, given the history of the universe?
I'm not a determinist in that sense, though, so I really can't answer this question. However, I can still answer the question because we do hold people accountable to the rules that humans make. Nobody says that the speed limit is a moral rule. At least, I hope not, because that would be kind of dumb. However, if you speed and a cop catches you, you get a ticket, or worse, depending on the circumstances, you could get arrested and put in jail. It's not immoral to speed, but you are still held accountable for following the rules in the society in which you exist. If society says you're not allowed to murder people, which most do because murdering people is not good for society, then you shouldn't murder people. Morality has nothing at all to do with it. Morality is just the emotional attachment that some people have to the rules of the culture that surrounds them. That doesn't mean that morality actually means anything, because it really doesn't. Lots of people get really attached to ideas when the ideas mean little or nothing in reality. I think that's something that a lot of people need to figure out. There's the real world, matter in motion, however you want to think about it, and then there's the social constructs that humans have made up that we live our day-to-day lives by. Those are not the same thing. In the real world, we're just a bunch of animals doing what animals do. We just evolved on this rock and we had no control over that. It doesn't matter if you like that or not, that's what's actually going on. Then, because humans have the capacity to invent social structures and control, at least to some degree, how we all behave, that's another entirely separate element. The speed limit means nothing. It's an entirely artificial invention that humans have been doing since almost the beginning of the existence of the automobile. The first speed limit came about in 1901 in Connecticut, which set the maximum speed of 12 miles an hour in cities and 15 miles an hour on country roads. That is completely artificial and arbitrary, just like everything else we do. That was, maybe 15, 16 years after cars were invented? We just make this stuff up, people. It's not that hard to understand.
And if it is the case that you believe in free will of the libertarian sort as an atheist, how is that possible without God?
That's a stupid question, though, although coming from a theist, that's not much of a surprise, is it? You can't just leap to God done it without evidence to back it up. Because can't I just say, well, how do you do that without invisible, intangible, morality-creating pixies? Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't make it a credible explanation. It's not that hard to figure out once you understand what's actually going on. And the religious, they have no interest in that, do they? Morals aren't objective. It's just shit we made up for our own utility. We have the capacity to decide what we want to do, what we want to allow others to do, and because of that, that's what we do. But that's not magical enough for these people. They want our moral inventions to be special. They're not, but they really want them to be, don't they? But that doesn't mean anything. That's why crap like slavery has come up. Because the people at the time decided that's what they wanted to do, so they invented all kinds of bald rationalizations for it, and they just put it into practice. At least until other people changed their minds. That's kind of how society works. It's just people doing whatever they can do to get through another day. It doesn't mean anything, and the crap that we come up with, it isn't forever. It isn't objective. It's just a momentary idea that we put into practice until we come up with something else. And the next thing might not even be better. It could be worse, and we see that throughout history. Although better and worse are both completely subjective, so that doesn't mean anything either. Hitler thought the Third Reich was better. Most people think he was wrong. Who's right? Nobody, because there is no right and wrong. It's only shit we made up. Get it through your head already. What we're doing today is no better or worse, objectively, than what we did 50 years ago, or what we'll be doing in another 50 years. It's just trying to get through the day without dying. Welcome to reality. Get a grip.
Now, just as a note, there are many determinists who will say they are compatibilists. And what that means is not that libertarian freedom is compatible with determinism. Compatibilists hold that determinism is true. It's just that we can hold people morally culpable in spite of the determinism. That moral culpability is possible, is compatible with determinism.
In general, I guess I am a compatibilist, at least insofar as there is a certain degree of determinism, but I don't think it's absolute, and I don't think that I'm being controlled by anything outside my own head. Influenced? Sure, because I am a biological being that has needs in order to survive, and I live in a culture where other people and events entirely beyond my control have a demonstrable impact on my life. But what goes on in my head, at least generally, I have some degree of control over, at least as far as the biology allows. Because all I am, all you are, all anyone is just an electrochemical reaction in the 3-pound meat sack in their head. That's it. That's all you are. That's all that's going on. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. That is the demonstrable truth. Consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. 100% of all evidence proves it. If you damage the physical brain, you damage consciousness. If you alter the physical brain, you alter consciousness. It doesn't matter what you want to be true, only what actually is. This is where we have a lot of problems, especially with the religious. They are running on pure fifis and faith, not on fact. The facts are the only things that actually matter. You need to come to grips with the facts, and a lot of people, they just don't wanna. Too bad. Facts are facts, and faith is shit. That's why so many of these questions for atheist videos go so wrong, because they aren't dealing with reality, only with the childish fantasy that they've got running in their heads. They don't really want to understand us. They want to explain why we're wrong because what we say makes them unhappy. This is honestly the problem, and the religious don't want to hear it. A lot of atheists, they don't want to hear it either, but it remains undeniably true. You've got to deal with real. What you want is entirely irrelevant. Grow the hell up. Enough said.
So it doesn't answer the question. I'm asking that question. How, if you're a determinist, how is it that people are morally culpable given that their choices could not have been otherwise?
So it's just one irrational belief questioning another. Because if you really look at the hardcore determinists, the ones who actually do what he's implying, then the whole question falls apart because you can't help holding yourself or others responsible, period. You can't help doing anything. They were forced to commit the crime, and everybody else involved was forced to throw them in jail. Nobody had a choice in this because choice is a complete illusion. So Braxton doesn't understand what he's asking, which I guess isn't much of a surprise either. Under the hard determinist model, Braxton had no choice but to make this video, and I had no choice but to make this response. If it's in the deterministic cards that I have to go and bash somebody's brains in later today, then I'm going to go do that because it's already been set in stone. Nobody has a choice, and that's the whole point. Everybody's actions are predetermined down to the smallest element. The fact that I just got up and got a drink, that was something I had no choice but to do. It was determined from the very beginning of time. The fact that I just wrote the last word that I wrote, that was determined too. So this is such a complete clusterfuck that it's hard to even address because everybody is just talking past each other. And that's usually the problems in these discussions. So let's just move on.
And if you believe in free will, how is that possible without God?
I already addressed that. Because even if you say, God done it, that doesn't solve anything. That doesn't explain anything. It's just Braxton blathering on about something he really wishes was true, but he can't show that it actually is. This is just wishful thinking in action. That's the end of the third question, and it took a while because Braxton, and a lot of people I figure, are so far out in the weeds that they can't even consider the ramifications of their positions rationally. That's why I don't talk about free will much, because it's just a mess. Because if hard determinism is true, nothing else matters. You and I are not having a conversation. We're just following a script that came into being 13.8 billion years ago, and we have no choice in the matter. We aren't thinking. Our brain chemistry is just reacting to the brain state that just so happens to exist right this second. It's hard to even say that consciousness is real because you have no control over it. It's just neurons firing as they were predetermined to do from the moment of the Big Bang. it all just falls apart, and on Braxton's side, it's no better. God knows everything that will ever happen with perfect clarity and cannot possibly be wrong. So you still don't have any control. What you do today was something that God foresaw from before you were born. You have no free will. You can't have free will. The Christian conception of God makes that impossible. So both sides are bullshit. That's why these discussions mean absolutely nothing, because you've got two groups that just talk past each other, even though, if you really think about it, they're both doing the exact same thing. Isn't that the definition of insanity? Let me know what you think down in the comments, because at the moment, my head hurts and I want to go lay down. Lots of people are not going to like this one. I'm just going to let you know that right up front. It's completely up to you if you want to watch, but if you wear your fifis on your sleeve, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to hate it. Oh well, I guess it is what it is, so let's get into it coming up next. Okay, so here's the question that I almost skipped. In fact, I might end up regretting this. Only time will tell, but I'd already written 3 out of the 5 responses, and there was no way I was going to stop now. So, fair warning, this is going to get really political and absolutely not politically correct. If you don't want to see that, or you don't want your fifis hurt, just turn it off now. You're probably not going to be happy, but I figure that most of my regular viewers, they're made of sterner stuff. So, let's get to Braxton's 4th question for Atheist 2025. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Number 4, Richard Dawkins has long been praised by atheists as one of the 4 horsemen of the new atheism.
I don't care about Dawkins. I don't do hero worship, never have, never will. But see, I already know where he's going with this, and this is the point that I almost shut it down. It doesn't help that this is the shortest of his questions by a long shot, and I figured, hey, that'll be pretty easy, until he started talking, and then it's like, yeah, do I really want to do this? Well, no, I really don't. Not that I tend to shy away from these topics. I talk about them all the time over on my blog, but the channel has become a very strong no politics zone, mostly because I know that my politics do not align with a lot of atheists out there, and I'm probably going to slam a lot of them here. I don't know yet, I'm not that far in. But fair warning, we are off into uncharted lands on the channel. I don't want anyone to say that I didn't let them know up front. So if you're going to get offended, just click out now. It's fine. I don't mind. Go right ahead. So anyhow, back to the question.
But recently, he's caused some controversy with some comments about the trans debate.
He really hasn't, though, because the reality is he's not wrong. Not that I pay much attention to him at all, but like J.K. Rowling, he's just saying what is supported by actual science and reality. Now, you know me, I'm 100% consistent in everything that I do, and I don't let my fifis get in the way. I don't care how anyone feels about reality. I care only about how reality actually is. You know, when I keep saying that you need to take yourself and your emotions out of any question and just go on the facts, well, the same goes here as well. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the atheist world that are running on pure fifis and faith, and as far as I'm concerned, those people can go fuck off too. Facts only, feelings be damned. So let's take a deep breath and get back to it.
For many atheists, he's right about science when it comes to young earth creationism versus evolution, but he's wrong when it comes to this current cultural debate.
And culture doesn't matter when it comes to reality, any more than religion does. Facts are facts, and fuck your feelings. It doesn't matter what you want to be true, only what actually is. Sadly, this is something that a lot of people of a particular religious leaning can't get through their heads, and for a lot of them, at least in my opinion, they have transplanted their more religious leanings into their political leanings, and they're still running on blind faith. But it sounds good to me. Nobody ought to care. Because when it comes to things like biology, and let's be honest, this goes for anything that objective science touches on, you should keep your feelings entirely out of it. If you want to go debate the philosophy of science, go right ahead. Knock yourself out. Nobody cares. But this isn't philosophy. It's reality that we're talking about, and reality matters more than your feelings do. We need to pay attention to the reality that we live in, and we can worry about the social consequences after that. Because, I'm sorry, but I just don't think we should lie to ourselves, even if it is for a supposedly good cause, just because it makes it easier to deal with our day-to-day problems. That's really what's going on in society today, where far too many people are taking all leave of their rational senses and going full emotional lunatic. But I guess that's neither here nor there at the moment, is it?
Do you personally think he's right or wrong, and why?
Like I said, I really don't pay any attention to him. In fact, I haven't read any of his books, probably since The God Delusion, maybe a little bit after, I don't remember, but I really don't pay any attention to him. I don't care what he says. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I don't know that I ever really did. There are a lot of atheists who deconverted because of The God Delusion and other Dawkins books, but I never did because I had deconverted long before they ever came out. My atheism far predates any of that. Now, while I've read his early books at least, I just went and looked just so I would get it right, but I've got The Blind Watchmaker, Extended Phenotype, God Delusion, Selfish Gene just sitting there. And I think as ebooks, I have a couple more, but I'm not going to go look at that. I don't have the kind of attachment to any of it that I've seen from a lot of other atheists over the years. So I can't really say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree, because I don't really know the details of what he says, because I don't pay a whole lot of attention to anything he says. In fact, most of what I know about modern Dawkins is what I hear from the whining of atheists of a particular social and political bent, and I've learned just to tune all that out because I just don't care. And I suppose that's because I'm not interested in anyone's take on things. I care about reality, not someone's interpretation thereof. Show me the evidence. Don't tell me what it means, because it probably doesn't mean anything. That's where we have problems, because how you interpret things is almost certainly wrong. And I don't care about people's wrong interpretations. I've said this many, many times before. If there was a massive asteroid that was going to hit the planet and there was nothing anyone could do about it, we were all going to die, would I want to know? And the answer is absolutely, because I care about the state of factual reality. I do not consider ignorance to be bliss. So yes, tell me the truth, or point to where I can find it out for myself, because I don't tend to give a damn what anyone says. And because I don't give a damn what anyone says, I'm going to go and look at the facts and make up my own mind. Everyone else might be running around like a lunatic crying, but I'm not going to. I will just accept it as another fact about the reality in which I live and move on, at least for as long as I can. Now, that was the end of his question, and yes, I guess I am trying to put it off, but okay, you gotta bite the bullet sometime. I kind of agree. Now, this isn't just a trans issue. I've been seeing this on that side of the political aisle for a very, very long time now. Whether anyone likes it or not, there are two sexes. Kind of, because there are a few exceptions that I'm not really going to go into unless I have to, but reality is what it is. Male and female, and some combinations that are relevant to the current conversation. That's it. Now, there are people out there who demonstrably are born into the wrong body. We know that. We can prove that. Gender dysphoria is a thing. We can do brain scans, analyze the genes, and do studies on hormonal influence, which strongly suggests that the structure of the brain of individuals with gender dysphoria actually shows that their brain and their body are not in alignment. Now, it's not a perfect study. It's not something we can just do and go, yep, you are definitely supposed to be male, or you are definitely supposed to be female. That kind of stuff is still in its infancy, but we can get some clues. This is a demonstrable medical condition. It's not fee-fees. It's not, I really feel this way. For the people who actually get medically diagnosed, I have a lot of sympathy, although I guess sympathy doesn't matter because they are what they demonstrably are, not what they want to be. If they want to take steps to correct the situation, at least as far as we're currently medically able to do so, then by all means, go right ahead. An actual medical diagnosis is a whole lot different than, here's how I feel, because I don't care how you feel. Grow the hell up. Yet, that's kind of how things go these days, isn't it? It's not about being medically diagnosed most of the time. It's about, how do I feel? And as I said, this has been going on for a really, really, really long time. A lot of this, at least in my personal opinion, goes back to teenagers who have traditionally sought out their own identity, and there's nothing at all wrong with that because that's what they do. That's where you get all the mods and the goths and, I mean, the hippies going back into the 60s. The stuff that, as far as we can measure back, it's always been going on. You can actually find Socrates, I think, who was talking about this stuff way back in ancient Greece. This is nothing new. It's teenagers trying to assert their independence while at the same time trying to be part of the in-group, whatever that happens to be. So they're trying to be different and exactly the same at the same time. And that's kind of weird, but a lot of people go through that. And if you go back into the 90s and early 2000s, sexual orientation became one of those fads. Now, there are definitely gay people. We can prove that too, and that's perfectly fine. Gay people are fine. Straight people are fine. Everybody's fine. I'm fine with that. But I saw a lot of people who honestly were trying on gay as an identity, not as something that they actually were, not as something they demonstrably were. There weren't a lot of publicly gay people out there, so saying that they were gay or bi or whatever, that made them different. Except so many of them were doing it all pretty much at the same time that they were all the same, weren't they? We know about how many actual gay people there are in society. It's a genetic question, not one of preference. Between 3 to 5% of any given population is gay. We know that. However, according to studies, Gen Z, about 30% of them identify being gay in some fashion. How you identify is not how you are. That is not reality. That's just fee-fees. This is identity as a social group. It's not actually real. Now, after a while, when everyone was pretending to be gay, it kind of lost its luster, and they went on to other things. Suddenly, there were 173 genders. No, they're not. There are not 173 genders. It isn't what you feel. It's what you are. And if you go and look at the lists of said genders, and no one can agree what they actually are because it's not objectively real, it's just all made up, some of them are really, really dumb. Actually, most of them are really, really dumb. I went through a couple of lists, and a huge number of entries are, I'm gay from a particular cultural context. I'm sorry, but your culture doesn't matter to your fucking genetics. I have cancer from a particular cultural context. Don't be dumb. If you're gay, cool. I don't care. I really don't. Be you. Yet, this all led into the whole don't misgender me nonsense, where people figure that they can force others, often legally, to treat them how they really want to be treated and somehow validate their I'm different position But that's not how reality works. Because in the United States, we have a constitutionally protected freedom of speech. And we don't have to make you feel good about the lies that you tell yourself and others. I know that bothers a lot of people, but too fucking bad. So, I have this really good, close trans friend. And I'm not doing this to say, see, I have trans friends or I have gay friends. Even though I do, but there's a point to this story. I have known him, and he was a him back then, since he was about 16. Now I think he's 57. I mean, his birthday is in April, and I'm not positive if he's going to be 57 or is 57 currently. And by the time this video comes out, it'll be past April, I think, or in April, I think. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's not the point of the story. I've known him for a very, very, very long time. Way back in the day, he was part of my gaming group, and he always played female characters. Always. I mean, always. Every single one. He was also very adamantly anti-gay. He'd never waste an opportunity to attack someone who was even potentially gay. I mean, not physically, but verbally, he was very, very anti-gay. Now, this was back in the early to mid-'80s, so that kind of thing was kind of accepted, but that's how he was. Over time, though, in his mid to late 20s, he found out that he had gender dysphoria. Yes, he went to a doctor and everything. I don't know what tests they ran or whatever, but they came to the conclusion that he actually was a woman in a man's body. He got legitimately diagnosed. It took him until he was somewhere in his 30s, I guess, before he decided that he wanted to be treated as a woman, and he came out to his friends and said as much. He didn't demand, he didn't list his pronouns, he just said, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. Most of his friends, although certainly not all, we accepted it. He had gone through all the steps and done things properly to show that in reality this is who he actually was, or I guess who she was now. Those of us who cared about him or her, it's kind of hard to do this transition story thing, but those of us who cared said, okay, we wanted this friendship to continue, so we chose to do what made the most sense to do. So he was then she, and she got all of the hormone treatments, and eventually she did get surgically altered, and frankly, and it's not just me who says this, but she makes a much better woman than she ever did a man. The point is, it wasn't forced. It was just, here I am, take it or leave it, and we chose to take it. She never pulled any of this crap with us, and I respect her for that. But let's remember, respect is earned, not simply granted, and it's absolutely not demanded. She did it the right way, and she said, hey, this is the way I'm going to live from here on out. If you want to be friends with me, cool. This is what you got to accept. If you don't, no harm, no foul. You can go over there. And to this day, she doesn't run around and demand people use her pronouns. If somebody calls her he, her, he, whatever. But if somebody calls her a man, because you can still tell, I mean, it's not obvious that she's always been a woman, but if somebody does that, she just goes, and walks away because she doesn't care. She is very confident in herself. And that's something a lot of modern people can't be, which is kind of sad. This is how you handle reality. You actually live in reality. But way too many people these days, they can't do that, can they? Because most of what we see out there today are demands for compliance. And, fuck you. You have not earned that respect from me. You have not demonstrated to me or anyone else that what you claim is an accurate representation of the real world. This is true for everyone. If my friend had come to me and declared, I've chosen to identify as a wombat, I'd have told them that they were nuts. I'm sure we wouldn't be friends today if that had happened. So, another story. I was, way back in the mid to late 80s, one of the founding members of furry fandom. Back before it was a fetish. Back when it was a bunch of people who just liked anthropomorphic art and liked watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, things like that. because that's really where it started. It had very little sexual content at all, at least publicly, although I'm sure that there were some people doing stuff behind the scenes that I didn't see, but mostly it was all family oriented, or at least could be seen by normal people. Anyway, it was fun for a couple of years, until at a convention one year, I overheard some idiots in leather gear in the elevator asking what all this stupid animal stuff was about. They were just there to fuck, because that's how they initially grew, by posting ads for the conventions in alternate lifestyle magazines and drawing in a bunch of perverts who didn't care about the anthropomorphic part of it. Over time, those people just adopted the idea as just another kink, but by that time I was long gone. Those are stories for another day, of course, but that's kind of how it shook out. But there are still a lot of really delusional people in the fandom, because I still have friends that are involved, at least from a distance, and I get to hear all the stories. But I really am an 80-foot-long fire-breathing red dragon. Yeah, fuck you. Go seek professional help, because that's not what you actually are. I don't care how you identify. I don't care what you want to be. I care what is actually going on in reality. And while it might sound a little weird to conflate trans people with furries, they're not really that far different. And that's kind of a sad thing too. You don't just get to declare your delusions and expect to be respected. Respect is earned, and you haven't earned it. You need to prove that this stuff is actually true with evidence. And for a lot of these people, and I'm talking more about the people of a particular political persuasion, who just wake up one day and go, yeah, today I'm going to be trans, and tomorrow I'll be gay, and then I'll be straight, and then I'll be this, and I'll be that, and I'll be whatever, because this is how I feel for the day. Those people can all just go fuck themselves, because I have no respect for them. And keep in mind, you don't have to care if I respect you. That's totally fine. But if you don't care if I respect you, then you have no right whatsoever to come and insist that I treat you the way that you want to be treated, that I buy into the lie that you insist on telling yourself. If you don't care, I don't care. It's fine. It's not like I'm out there telling you that you're wrong. You do you. I will just ignore you as best I can, because I don't care. That's really how I look at a lot of these people of a particular political and social persuasion. They're really out there just role-playing. Now, I'm sure that there are actual trans people involved, people who have been medically diagnosed and who actually have gender dysphoria, and those people, they are what they are. But for most of them, no. Now, I saw a video a long time ago, and I did try to go find the data, and I couldn't, so forgive me, take this as you will. But there was a study in a British school where they found that something like 60% of students knew someone or were themselves seeking gender reassignment surgery, or potentially were researching it or whatever. And that is absurdly out of line with what we know about trans people. Less than 1% of any given population is legitimately trans. This isn't real. It's just make-believe. There aren't 147 different genders. There are 2. Gender is just a made-up concept anyhow. It's how they get around, well, my sex is X, but my gender is Y. Gender isn't even a fucking thing. Never has been, never will be. You are what you are as defined by your genes and your biology, not by your fee-fees. It doesn't matter what you really want to be true. And I say this about everybody. It doesn't matter what the creationists want to be true. There was no creation. There was no universal flood. There was no exodus from Egypt. There was none of this stuff. It's not defensible rationally. You have to be able to back it up. And sadly, we live in a culture these days where they've kind of taken the motherly advice, well, you can be anything you want to be seriously. Yeah, I want to be an elephant. It doesn't work that way. You need professional help. If you don't care enough to find out what's really going on, and sadly lots of people don't, then you're just nuts. This kind of reminds me a lot of the people, and while I'm pissing people off, I might as well just do it, who blindly declare, I'm autistic. Oh, really? Have you had that medically diagnosed? Are you being treated? No, I just know it. Yeah, fuck off. Because this is really, really common. There are people out there who just claim this just to cover up their antisocial behavior. No, you're not autistic, you're just a dick. Now, I'm not down on people who are legitimately autistic or whatever. I'm just lumping a lot of things under the umbrella of autism, which I probably shouldn't do, but this video is going to be really, really long if I had to go into all the different disorders and stuff. So we're just going to do what we do. But if you've been legitimately diagnosed and are being treated for it, hey, that's fine. I got no problems with you whatsoever. I really don't. No complaints of any kind. If you're just making it up so you can be different, and I do think a lot of people are, then go fuck yourself. I am not remotely impressed. And now I've drifted really far afield from the original question, which I figure I've already answered, so all the assorted snowflakes can take their delusions and empty claims and just go fuck themselves, because unless your claims are in accordance with demonstrable reality, I don't care. I just don't. And before you say, there are doctors who will diagnose anything. Yeah, I know. It's pathetic. It's like the idiots who will write a letter saying that somebody needs an emotional support animal just because they want to move into a no-pet apartment. Because, hey, so long as they're getting paid, what difference does it make? I'm sorry, but if you need an animal to be sane, you ought to be in therapy or something. Your feelings don't matter. It's time to grow up and deal with reality. It's honestly not that hard. Because sadly, over the past, 20, 30 years or so, probably closer to 20, we've just raised an entire culture of wimps. People who can't handle the real world, so they just lie to themselves. And you know what that sounds like, don't you? Religion! Because it's essentially doing the same thing. But I'm not going to get into that because this has been long enough. So anyway, that was my meandering answer to the question. Anyone who is now upset, please feel free to unsubscribe, because honestly, this probably isn't the place for you. The people that I really want to hang around here are the people who can deal with reality without letting their emotions get in the way. The people we really need in the world are the ones who can look at reality, accept it as it really is to the best of our ability to currently examine it, and then just move on from there. I'm entirely cool with those people. It's the ones who constantly whine, I'm not happy, that I've got little patience for. You don't just get to redefine your reality in a way that makes you feel good. The facts are the facts. Learn to deal. I wish more people would be that way, but sadly, humanity is dumb and delusional, and that's nothing at all to be proud of. So there's my answer. We'll come back in a week and handle his last questions, and at the moment, I've got absolutely no idea what it is, but it kind of looks like a long one, so that might be interesting. He, or I guess whoever uploads his videos, they marked all of the questions in the timeline so I can at least gauge how long they are without having to watch them first. So I at least get to look and see how long I think it's going to take to go through them. And I could still be wrong. This was the shortest by far, but it looks like it had to have the longest answer so far. At least so far, because I don't know about the future. And it really had nothing at all to do with atheism. So, yeah, maybe I should start pre-screening some of these videos for validity before I get to them. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and I guess I'll see you all next time. One last time into the breach, my friends, and this might be the worst of them all. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but wait till the end before you answer. Because we're going to break down why the religious are so clueless once and for all. You don't want to miss that, so stay tuned. So here we go again with Braxton Hunter and his very last question for Atheists 2025. Hopefully this one will be less political because you've got no idea how close I got to just bombing out of the whole thing after the last one. I really don't want to do politics on the channel if I can help it. That said, this seems to be one of the longest questions he has based on how the video is cut up, so this might be a long video. We'll just have to see. Will it be a worthwhile question? I don't know. Let's get to it and find out.
Now, for this last question, there's a little bit of setup.
That's kind of what I was worried about. This question is literally a third of his entire video, by far longer than any of the others, and I have no idea what he's going to say next. So let's be gracious and let him get through his setup, and I guess we'll have to see where this goes.
Here's a quote from Robin Collins about the fine-tuning of the universe, and I'd like to know what your reaction to it is. Suppose we went on a mission to Mars and found a domed structure in which everything was set up just right for life to exist.
I'm going to respond as the desire strikes me, just like always. So this is going to expose, I figure, all of the failures that the religious have with regard to the fine-tuning argument. The immediate question here has to be, well, what kind of life are you talking about? Because the only thing the religious ever mean is our kind of life. That doesn't mean that's the only kind of life that could ever exist. If it were possible for a life form to exist within the core of a star, then the star could be argued to be fine-tuned for that form of life. Except it really couldn't, because we have no reason to think that said form of star-living life form was ever intended to be there from the start. It, like we, could have just evolved to fit the existing biome. That biome would not have to have been designed to fit that life form. And that's where the religious go completely wrong. They assume that we were intended, but that is incorrect. We are the end result of evolution, and we evolved to fit the conditions that existed on this planet. The conditions weren't here just to give rise to us. So the whole thing falls apart when you boot their unwarranted assumptions out the door. I don't think this question is going to go as well for Braxton as he hopes, but let's see.
The temperature, for example, was set to around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity was at 50%.
There are creatures living on Earth right now that couldn't survive under those conditions. There are all kinds of animals that live around deep-sea thermal vents, for instance, that could not live on the surface. At 70%, they die. Without those great pressures, they die. Therefore, you can't say that his proposed environment was fine-tuned for life, because he doesn't mean life, he means human life. He's not being honest in his assumptions, because a universe fine-tuned for tube worms or yeti crabs would be very different and not conducive to our form of life at all. If that were the case, not that we'd be here at all, but let's just pretend, he wouldn't be saying, well, look how fine-tuned the universe is. Why? Because it's not getting him where he desperately wants to go. This is where Braxton immediately goes wrong, because he can't be honest about his preconceptions. Most theists can't. This is just talking about creatures that exist on our own planet, not things that might potentially be out there in the universe somewhere, based on entirely different chemical mixtures, etc. This is why the whole thing just falls apart, because they're not being honest at all.
Moreover, there was an oxygen recycling system, an energy gathering system, and a whole system for the production of food.
What food? What about life that doesn't breathe oxygen? If you look at a lot of bacteria and parasitic life, they don't need oxygen at all. What about their form of life? Purple bacteria live in the airless soil of Laguna La Brava up on the Atacama Salt Flat. They use sunlight to photosynthesize arsenic and sulfur for energy. They don't need oxygen at all. That's why you have to ask these people what they mean, and most of them won't be honest about it. They are only concerned about themselves. And that's nothing to be proud of.
Put simply, the dome structure appeared to be a fully functioning biosphere. What conclusion would we draw from finding this structure?
If it looked like what he's picturing on screen, that it was built for a purpose because such things don't occur in nature, at least not the nature on Earth. Maybe that does occur in his hypothetical Mars, and that's something that we'd need to investigate, but this is where he, or whoever came up with it, since I doubt Braxton did, because he said something and I don't really remember what, that's where they're going wrong. Because Earth is a natural environment. Some parts of Earth are hospitable to human life. Most of it is not. Without technology, most of the planet is off limits to long-term human habitation. We're not going to be living on the floor of the ocean or at the poles anytime soon. So he's making a bunch of unwarranted assumptions here, and I'm just going to have to call him out on it. Humans can't live in the vacuum of space without aid. So much for fine-tuning.
Will we draw the conclusion that it just happened to form by chance? Certainly not. Instead, we would unanimously conclude that it was designed by some intelligent being.
And that is wrong for all of the reasons that I've already gone into. Because every single one of his assumptions and assertions are flatly unjustifiable. We're not special. We were not preordained, and nothing was made for us. We're just what happened given the environment available for us to evolve in. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that the religious have because they're just running on pure fifis and faith, not facts and evidence. They are looking for an imaginary father figure in the sky to take care of them and make them happy, and that, based on the evidence that we have, isn't real. Not that they care, because of course they don't. They just want to be happy, but that's childish and stupid.
Why would we draw this conclusion? Because an intelligent designer appears to be the only plausible explanation for the existence of the structure.
Nope, it's not. It's just the explanation that you like. Because if we did go to Mars and we did find a structure that looked kind of like that, but within it was an environment that perfectly fits some other form of life, some alien form of life, would Braxton say that they must have a god that perfectly fine-tuned Mars for them? Of course not. Because Braxton, like all other apologists, he just can't get out of his own head. He really wants this stuff that he believes to be true, but he can't step back and understand that his preconceptions are nonsense. Just because he desperately wants them to be true, that doesn't make them true. He is not remotely concerned with reality, that those critters on Mars just evolved to fit the existing environment, just like we did. He wants to feel special, but he's not. So, sorry Braxton, you're just being an idiot. Knock it off.
That is the only alternative explanation we can think of, that the structure was formed by some natural process, seems extremely unlikely.
Which is the argument from personal incredulity. Braxton, you are engaged in a logical fallacy. It doesn't matter what you can think of or what you find likely. It matters what is actually true. A couple of thousand years ago, if someone had come up with the idea that the Earth wasn't flat, they would have been laughed off the stage. Probably they would have been killed because that's what the religious tend to do, never mind the fact that they were actually right. The ignorant people of the time, they wouldn't be able to accept it, any more than the ignorant people like Braxton today will accept the demonstrable truth that we are just evolved creatures. Their preconceptions get in the way, and they don't care about the truth. Now, maybe this is a good time to bring this up, but Braxton's video has gotten completely trashed. It's got more than twice as many downvotes as upvotes, and for a channel with nearly 22,000 subscribers, this video has only been watched 3,000 times. That's really common for religious channels, isn't it? So maybe, I thought, that this was a Questions for Atheists video. Maybe it was just his regular viewers that didn't watch it. But no, that's all of his videos. My channel gets more views than his does most of the time. And I've only got about 10% of his subscribers. So this is not what success looks like. It's just not. Wonder why the religious fail at this so miserably.
Of course, it is possible that, for example, through some volcanic eruption, various metals and other compounds could have formed and then separated out in just the right way to produce the biosphere. But such a scenario strikes us as extraordinarily unlikely.
It strikes you as extraordinarily unlikely because you are not concerned with the truth, only your own personal feelings, and you are incapable of separating yourself from your irrational faith. Now, I have no idea how likely such a scenario might be because the whole thing is just a thought experiment, cooked up specifically to make the point that he's trying to make. Here's this thing that we assume was designed because the graphics we're putting on screen were made to elicit that reaction. That's why I don't play with hypotheticals, because they are always biased. I've just explained all of the faulty assumptions that the religious are using because they really like their own religious beliefs. But that doesn't mean that any of it is actually true, does it? Come on back when such a thing actually happens in demonstrable reality, and you can take yourself out of the equation, because I think we're going to be waiting for a very long time, don't you?
Thus making this alternative explanation unbelievable. The universe is analogous to such a biosphere, according to recent findings in physics.
It is nothing remotely of the sort. I've already shown that our own planet isn't fine-tuned for anything. Without our own technology, we are very limited in where we can live. Humans, without thick coats stolen from other animals that evolved to live there, we'd be unable to live anywhere where it snowed significantly. Most of us couldn't live at the top of mountains where oxygen is hard to come by. We couldn't live underwater. We couldn't live on active volcanoes. The list goes on and on and on. This is not being fine-tuned for life. If we look outward, we cannot live on any other planet that we've been able to study, much less the space that you'd have to go through to get there. The universe is not fine-tuned for anything, except maybe black holes. This is just stupid. The raw footage of space that we can actually survive in over the whole of the universe would be 0.0000000, then a near infinite number of zeros, followed by a 1%. Braxton, you're an idiot. You really are.
Almost everything about the basic structure of the universe, for example, the fundamental laws and parameters of physics and the initial distribution of matter and energy, is balanced on a razor's edge for life to occur.
It is nothing remotely of the sort. If the parameters had been different, assuming for a moment that they could have been different because we just don't know that, then whatever had arisen in that new universe would have been different. We wouldn't have been there, but we're not special anyhow because we're just not. We're just what happens when conditions happen to be such that our form of life can arise. And that doesn't make our form of life anything special. Just because you're really attached to yourself, that doesn't make you worthwhile. If no life had been possible, then there wouldn't have been anyone there to argue about it, would there? Because this is really where the religious go wrong. They make assumptions based on ego, not based on any evidence. Fuck your feelings, Braxton. You're just making yourself look dumb.
As the eminent Princeton physicist Freeman Dyson notes, quote, "There are many lucky accidents in physics. Without such accidents, water could not exist as liquid, chains of carbon atoms could not form complex organic molecules, and hydrogen atoms could not form breakable bridges between molecules."
So what? Because ultimately, this is one more place where they go wrong. They are looking for an explanation for why things are exactly the way that they are because they are so emotionally attached to their current reality. But that doesn't mean anything, does it? That we're here means nothing, but that we're here. If the universe had been different, let's play make-believe for a moment, then whatever life arose in the universe, they'd probably be saying the same thing. Isn't it wonderful that the universe was fine-tuned just for us? And it wouldn't be true for them either. This is where the religious go so wrong. They lack a rational view of reality. They don't care what's actually true. They only care about their own emotional comfort. And this is why they're so laughably dumb.
In short, life as we know it would be impossible.
Who cares about life as we know it? Oh, I know he does, but I don't, because all of his arguments hinge on us. But we're not that hot. This is just emotional attachment, and emotional attachment means absolutely nothing. The religious just can't get that through their heads. And in fact, I've had more than a few discussions with theists where I've said that we're not special, and they've gotten mad and stomped off because they just can't accept that. This is another them problem. I hope no one is surprised.
Now, he goes on to say the following. A few examples from the literature of this fine-tuning are listed below.
I will address this, but it's all going to be the same response. If is not because. We can only deal with the universe that we actually have, not the wishes and dreams that you make up in your head. But the religious spent so much time living in their own heads that they can't even see the world outside anymore. That's one of the big problems that they have, after all. So let's get to it. And if this gets too absurd, I'll just fast forward through some of it because this is getting long enough as it is.
1. If the initial explosion of the Big Bang had differed in strength by as little as 1 part in 10 to the 60th, the universe would have either quickly collapsed back on itself or expanded too quickly for stars to form. In either case, life would be impossible.
And there would be no one here to debate the issue. So what? For all we know, there are millions of universes out there that don't support life, or that haven't supported life, or whatever. So what? We can only deal with the situation that we've actually got, not the 1,000,001 what-if questions that the religious love to ask. It doesn't make us special. It just doesn't. Could it have been different? We don't know. It doesn't matter if it could. What we have here and now is all that matters. Try to deal with it rationally if you could, because that would really be a nice change of pace.
2. Calculations indicate that if the strong nuclear force, the force that binds protons and neutrons together in an atom, had been stronger or weaker by as little as 5%, life would be impossible.
You know, I'm just going to skip all of this because my answer is going to be the same for absolutely everything. So what? This is just idiotic what-ifism. This is like in old movies where people are walking by on the sidewalk and a piano falls out of a building and misses everybody by inches. Well, what if? Doesn't matter. It missed. That doesn't make you special. If it had hit and killed you, would that have made you unspecial? This is just pointless. But this is the kind of mental masturbation that the religious, and to be fair, lots of other people go through every single day. Well, if I was on the battlefield and the guy next to me got shot and I didn't, well, that just means that I'm better than he was. Yeah, fuck you. It's just how shit happens, and shit happening is how the world works a lot of the time. It doesn't mean anything. There is no inherent purpose. The world is just physics doing what physics does. When it comes right down to it, you are no more important than a random rock or tree. And I know that hurts the feelings of a lot of people, but too bad. If a lion catches a gazelle and misses the one right next to it, that doesn't make the one that got away special. Lucky maybe, but special? No. It might go on to pass its genes on to the next generation, and if there was anything that made it slightly faster or more agile, whatever, okay, that's just evolution doing its job. Luck doesn't transfer, though. Sometimes shit just happens. Let's not pretend it means anything at all, because it doesn't. So, lots of fast forwarding, unless I see something that I really want to respond to, which, reading some of the stuff on screen right now, I really can't imagine that's going to happen, but let's see.
3. Calculations are partially stronger or weaker by 1 part in 10 to the 40th. The same stars doesn't exist. This would most likely make life impossible. 4. If the neutron not 1.001 times mass of the proton, all protons would have decay into neutrons, where all neutrons would have decay into protons, and thus life would not be possible. 5. If the electromagnetic force was slightly stronger or weaker, life would be impossible for a variety of different reasons. Now, these are some of the kinds of facts that are often used to make fine-tuning arguments.
And they're all crap and rely on religious preconceptions, which are, in and of themselves, just crap too. we can't really define life very well. We say, well, this is what life looks like that we've encountered. But that doesn't really mean anything, does it? The definition of life is pretty bad all in all. What about life that looks absolutely nothing like us? That's not even part of the equation. If we ever went to Mars or Venus or whatever, we might wander around and not even recognize the dominant life form that evolved to exist there because it falls outside of our own very narrow definition of what life is. Now, this is just an example, but out in Death Valley, there are rocks that just move around due to a combination of rain, ice, and wind. It's a phenomenon called sailing stones. Now, they're not alive, not by our current definition of life, but if you went to another planet with entirely different conditions and saw the exact same phenomena and said, well, that's not alive, you don't know that. You'd have to investigate it, of course, but for the sake of the argument, let's just say it could be a primitive form of life that actually does move. It just looks like rocks. It's not even on the radar of most people. Or potential life forms based on elements other than carbon. We've never seen one. We've theorized that they could exist, but we honestly have no idea. The religious would just throw that out because it doesn't fit in with their preconceptions. So could those potential life forms existing in a different universe with different characteristics. We don't know anything about that, and neither do you. Neither does anyone. So the claim that life simply couldn't exist in a different situation is just bullshit. That is making an assertion that you have absolutely no way to back up. It's just trying to get where you really want to go, and I'm sorry, but that is just stupid.
Some of the best arguments for God's existence according to almost everyone involved.
The dumb people. Because I've already blown every damn thing you said out of the water. Not that you care, because you are not looking for the truth. You are looking for comfort, and comfort doesn't matter, but that's all they're after, right? This is when you're so emotionally attached to an idea that you can't stop and think, hey, is that idea worthwhile to begin with? That's where the religious are going wrong. And to be fair, lots of other people too. This is why you have to be able to take yourself completely out of it, and they refuse to even try. If this is the best that they've got, then give up, because you're just making fools of yourselves. But I really like it. Doesn't matter. Grow the hell up.
So here's the question. Are we wrong to think that this supports theism? If so, why?
Yes, you are wrong. This is a very common problem. In fact, it's the same problem as always, because you haven't gotten anywhere remotely close to a god yet. This is the absurdly common argument from ignorance. I don't get it, therefore God. Even if everything you said were actually true, and it's laughably not, but let's pretend, even if it was true, that doesn't get you to any God, much less your specific God. For the religious, God is just this word that describes the unknown, then they just assume it exists, staple all kinds of comforting characteristics onto it, and call it a day. And that is fucking stupid. The answer to all of this is, I don't know, and neither do you. We probably never will. Get over yourself. But they can't do that because they don't care about actual reality. The simple fact is, there's lots of stuff out there that we will probably never know. Every question we answer uncovers 10 more questions. Welcome to the real world. Sit down and shut the fuck up because you're just making a fool of yourself. We are very limited creatures with very short relative lifespans, with a very narrow view of actual reality. We're never going to get it all. That doesn't mean you can just make shit up because you don't like that fact. That's why the religious are just making fools of themselves, because they can't get that simple fact through their heads. They can't deal with the real world in which they live, because they don't want to live in the real world. They spend their entire lives in what if, and because, at least according to them, if absolutely is because, they come to ridiculously unsupported conclusions because they want to get that dopamine shot in the noggin that they're really after. And then you get people like Braxton, and Trust me, he's not remotely alone, making these absurd lists of questions for atheists and looking really dumb in the process. That doesn't mean we're necessarily right about things, but at least we're not locked into our heads and emotions like the religious usually are. We're not trying to answer unanswerable questions by just making shit up. Because we're not that dumb, at least by and large. Maybe you people should give that a shot. I mean, seriously, it can only help.